It was Thanksgiving morning, and I arrived at my daughter's house carrying a homemade turkey I had spent 2 days preparing. The recipe was my late husband's favorite, one I had perfected over 40 years of marriage. I knocked on the door with trembling hands, excited to see my grandchildren's faces light up the way they always did when Grandma visited. But when the door opened, my daughter's eyes were cold, distant, as if I were a stranger she barely recognized. "Oh, it's you, Mom," she said flatly, not even stepping aside to let me in. "You're early." Before I continue, make sure to follow the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Teresa, and I'm 72 years old. It warms my heart to know how far these stories travel. I stood there on that cold November morning in Denver, holding a 20-pound turkey that was starting to make my arms ache. The wind cut through my thin coat, but my daughter made no move to help me inside. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart," I said, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. "I made Dad's famous turkey. Remember how much you loved it when you were little?" My daughter, Karen, sighed heavily, finally stepping aside. "Just put it in the kitchen. Derek and I are in the middle of something important. No hug, no kiss, no thank you for driving 3 hours, Mom." I walked through the marble foyer of the house I had helped them buy 7 years ago, a 5-bedroom colonial in the most expensive neighborhood of Boulder. I had contributed the entire down payment, $120,000, money from selling the family home, where I had raised Karen after her father died. The kitchen was massive, all granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, part of a renovation I had funded when Karen said the original kitchen was too dated for entertaining. That renovation cost me $35,000. I set the turkey on the counter and looked around. Through the window, I could see my twin grandchildren, Emma and Ethan, playing in the backyard with their tablets, oblivious to my arrival. They were 12 now, and I had paid for their private school tuition every semester since kindergarten, $28,000 a year, for 7 years, almost $200,000. Just for their education. I waited in that empty kitchen for 20 minutes before Karen finally appeared. She looked perfect, as always. Designer clothes, professional highlights, manicured nails, all funded by the loan I had given her 8 years ago to open her interior design studio. $85,000 I had secured by taking out a second mortgage on my small condo in Denver, a loan that had never been repaid, despite her promises. "So," Karen said, pouring herself a glass of wine without offering me anything, "Derek and I need to talk to you about something." My heart sank. I knew that tone. She had used it since childhood, right before asking for something that would cost me dearly. "Of course, sweetheart." "What is it?" She gestured toward the living room. "Let's sit down. Derek will join us in a minute." I followed her to the leather sectional, another purchase I had helped finance, when she complained that her old furniture didn't match the new renovation. I sat down carefully, my arthritic knees protesting after the long drive. Derek appeared a moment later. My son-in-law was a real estate developer, or at least he called himself one. In the 8 years since he married Karen, he had launched 5 different projects. All of them failed. And every time, I was the one who covered their losses. The condo investment in Aspen that went bankrupt, $40,000. The strip mall project that never broke ground, $25,000. The Sure Thing apartment complex that lost its permits, $30,000. Derek sat down across from me, his face arranged in what he probably thought was a sympathetic expression. "Teresa," he began, using my first name as he always did, never Mom or even Mrs. Patterson. "We've been thinking about your situation." "My situation?" Karen leaned forward. "Mom, you're 72 years old. You live alone in that tiny condo. You have health issues. We're worried about you." For a brief moment, my heart softened. Maybe I had misjudged them. Maybe they actually cared. "That's sweet of you to worry, but I'm fine. Dr. Morrison says my blood pressure is under control. And that's not what we mean," Derek interrupted. He exchanged a look with Karen. "We think it's time you considered your future. And ours." Karen took a deep breath, then looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't love or even concern. It was calculation. Mom, the best Thanksgiving gift you could give us would be to sign over your assets now. The condo, your savings, everything. Move into assisted living and let us manage your affairs. You'd be doing us all a favor. The world stopped. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly in the silence. What? I whispered. Think about it logically, Derek said, leaning back as if we were discussing a business deal. You're going to die eventually. Why make everyone wait? If you transfer everything now, we can use the money to invest properly. And you won't have to worry about anything. We'll find you a nice facility. My hands trembled. 72 years of life, 45 years of motherhood, and I had never imagined hearing such words from my own daughter. Karen, I said, my voice breaking. I'm your mother. I gave up everything for you. I've spent my entire retirement helping you and Derek. And that's exactly the problem, Karen snapped. You've always held it over our heads. Every dollar you've given us comes with strings attached. We're tired of feeling guilty. Just sign everything over. And we can all move on with our lives. I looked at my daughter, searching for any trace of the little girl who used to climb into my lap, who told me I was the best mommy in the world, who cried when I dropped her off at college because she would miss me so much. That girl was gone. In her place sat a stranger who saw her mother as nothing more than an obstacle between her and an inheritance. You want me to give you everything I have, I said slowly, and go live in a nursing home so you don't have to deal with me anymore. We're not saying it like that, Karen replied, rolling her eyes. We're saying it's practical. You're old, Mom. Anything could happen. And honestly, your constant presence in our lives is exhausting. The surprise visits, the phone calls, the guilt trips about how much you've sacrificed. We need space to live our own lives. I stood up on shaking legs. I grabbed my purse from the side table. I walked toward the door without another word. Mom, where are you going? Karen called out, but her voice held no concern, only annoyance. We haven't even eaten dinner yet. I turned back one last time. There was no regret in her eyes. No recognition that she had just shattered her mother's heart. Happy Thanksgiving, Karen, I said quietly, and closed the door behind me. She didn't know that in that moment, she awakened something inside me that had been sleeping for decades. Not a fire of destruction, but of rebirth. The drive back to Denver was a blur. I don't remember the highway or the traffic or the cold November sunset. All I could hear was my daughter's voice, telling me the best gift I could give her was to sign away my life and disappear into a facility. When I finally reached my small condo, I collapsed onto the couch, the same one where I used to hold Karen as a baby, sing her to sleep, help her with homework through high school. I stayed there all night, unable to sleep, replaying every sacrifice I had ever made. I made lists. I calculated. And the numbers devastated me. When Karen was 8 and needed braces, I worked double shifts at the hospital for 2 years to afford them. $4,000. When she was 16 and wanted a car, I bought her a used Honda that I couldn't really afford. $8,000. When she got into an expensive private college instead of the state school that offered her a scholarship, I took out loans to make her dream possible. $92,000 in tuition over 4 years. Her first wedding, a lavish affair at a country club because her fiancé's family expected nothing less, cost me $22,000. The marriage lasted 18 months. Her second wedding to Derek was even more expensive. $35,000 for the venue, the dress, the imported flowers, the 5-course dinner, the house down payment, the renovations, the business loan, the school tuition, Derek's failed investments, emergency after emergency after emergency. I spent the entire night adding up every dollar, every sacrifice, every dream I had postponed or abandoned entirely for my daughter's happiness. The total made me gasp. Over $670,000. More than $500,000 over 45 years, not counting interest, not counting the opportunities I had missed, the trips I had never taken, the retirement I had never enjoyed. And all of it had led to this. to my daughter telling me the best Thanksgiving gift would be for me to sign away everything and disappear. As dawn broke over Denver, something inside me shifted. The crushing pain transformed into something else. Not quite anger, though there was plenty of that. It was clarity, crystal clear and absolute. I had been manipulated, used, exploited by someone who saw maternal love as a resource to be extracted, not a sacred bond to be cherished. At 7 o'clock in the morning, I did something I had never done before. I picked up my phone and blocked Karen's number. Then I blocked Derek's number. Then I blocked every number connected to their household. It was my first step toward reclaiming my life. I showered, put on my best outfit, a navy blue dress I hadn't worn in years because I was always saving money for Karen's next emergency, and stepped outside with a purpose that had nothing to do with my daughter. My first stop was the bank. Karen and I shared a savings account I had set up years ago for her emergencies. I had been depositing money into it regularly, a safety net she knew she could always count on. The account held nearly $14,000. "Good morning, Mrs. Patterson," the bank manager greeted me. "How can I help you today?" "I'd like to close account number 7,824 to 5,591, I said calmly. "Please transfer the entire balance to my personal account." "Are you sure? That's a joint account with your daughter." "I'm absolutely certain." I signed the paperwork with a steady hand. Watching that money return to my control felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been slowly eroding for decades. But I wasn't finished. My next stop was the mortgage company. When Karen and Derek bought their house, I had not only paid the down payment but also co-signed the loan. My name was on the deed as a partial owner, protection I had insisted on despite Karen's protests. "Mrs. Patterson, what brings you in today?" the loan officer asked. "I need to review the terms of the mortgage where I'm listed as guarantor. I want to understand my rights and options." The loan officer pulled up the file and explained that as a co-signer and partial owner, I had significant legal standing, especially if the primary borrowers missed payments. "Have there been any missed payments recently?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Derek had mentioned at Christmas last year that they were a little tight after another investment went bad. He had expected me to offer help, as I always did. This time, I had pretended not to hear. "Actually, yes," the officer said, frowning at her screen. "They've missed the last 2 payments. We've sent notices, but I'd like to begin the process of exercising my rights as guarantor," I said firmly. Her eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "I'll schedule you with our legal department." When I left the mortgage company, I felt lighter than I had in years. For 45 years, I had lived entirely for Karen, sacrificing my dreams, my money, my time, my health, all for a daughter who saw her mother as nothing more than a funding source. No more. My final stop that day was a travel agency specializing in relocation for retirees. I had kept one of their brochures in my drawer for 5 years, secretly dreaming of a different life. "How can I help you?" a young woman asked with a bright smile. "I want to know how a 72-year-old woman can start a new life in Portugal." The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation and planning. I contacted a lawyer, Mr. Harrison, who specialized in family financial disputes. When I explained my situation, he was sympathetic, but professional. "You have every right to protect your assets," he assured me. "The documents you signed gave you legal standing, and if your daughter and son-in-law are defaulting on the mortgage, you can exercise those rights. What about the money I've given them over the years?" "Gifts are generally not recoverable," he said carefully. "But the mortgage situation is different, and any future support is entirely your decision." I also updated my will. Instead of leaving everything to Karen, as I had originally planned, I divided my estate among 3 charities I cared about: a children's hospital, a scholarship fund for nursing students, and an animal shelter where I had volunteered for years. Karen would receive exactly $100, just enough to ensure the will couldn't be contested as an oversight. On the 5th day, My phone began ringing relentlessly. Karen had finally noticed that her calls weren't going through. She tried calling from Derek's phone, from the house phone, from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them all. Then came the texts from a number I hadn't blocked yet. "Mom, what's going on? Why aren't you answering?" "Mom," the bank said, "you closed our emergency account." "What the hell?" "We need to talk. Call me back." "Mom, this is serious. The mortgage company sent us a threatening letter mentioning your name." I blocked that number too. On the 7th day, Derek showed up at my condo. I watched him through the peephole, looking frantic and disheveled, a far cry from his usual arrogant demeanor. "Teresa, please," he called through the door. "I know you're in there. We need to talk about this. You're making a huge mistake." I didn't respond. "Look, I know Karen said some things she didn't mean. She was stressed. The business hasn't been doing well. We've had a lot of pressure lately. She didn't mean it." Silence from my side. "Teresa, please. If you go through with this mortgage thing, we could lose the house. Think about the kids. Emma and Ethan need stability." I opened the door just a crack, the chain still in place. "Derek," I said calmly, "your wife made it very clear. My presence is a burden she no longer wants to bear. She asked me to sign over everything and disappear. I'm simply honoring her request." She didn't mean. She seemed very sincere when she said the best gift I could give her was to hand over my assets and go live in a nursing home. "Were you going to argue with her? Because I didn't hear you say a single word in my defense." He looked down. "There was no defense for the indefensible. Please," he whispered, "give me a chance to fix this." "It's too late," I said, and closed the door. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I boarded a plane to Lisbon, Portugal. My friend Martha, a widow I had known for 30 years, drove me to the airport. She was the only person who knew my plans. "You're sure about this?" she asked as we said goodbye at the security gate. "I've never been more sure of anything." Martha squeezed my hand. "I'll handle things on this end, and when Karen comes looking for you, I'll tell her exactly what she needs to hear." The flight was long but peaceful. 12 hours of silence, no phone calls demanding money, no emergencies requiring my immediate assistance. I wrote in a journal the entire time, documenting everything that had happened, everything I was feeling. "For the first time in 45 years, I wrote, I am doing something entirely for myself. It's terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely right." Lisbon welcomed me with sunshine and warmth, a stark contrast to the cold I had left behind in Denver. A young man from the relocation agency met me at the airport, holding a sign with my name. "Mrs. Patterson? Welcome to Portugal. I'm Miguel. I'll be helping you get settled." He drove me to a charming apartment in the Alfama district, Lisbon's oldest neighborhood. It was on the second floor of a centuries-old building, with windows overlooking a narrow cobblestone street and a tiny balcony filled with flower pots left by the previous tenant. "It's perfect," I breathed, looking around at my new home. That first evening, I sat on my little balcony with a glass of Portuguese wine, listening to the distant sound of fado music floating up from a restaurant below. The city sparkled with lights, ancient and beautiful, and completely foreign. My phone buzzed. It was Martha. "Karen came to my house today. Hysterical," she reported. "She wanted to know where you went. I told her I had no idea, that you'd mentioned something about traveling but never said where." "How did she react?" "She accused me of lying. Then she started crying about the mortgage and how you were ruining their lives. Not once did she apologize for what she said. Not once did she ask if you were okay or healthy or happy. Just money, money, money." I smiled sadly. It was exactly what I had expected. "One more thing," Martha continued. "She said Derek hired a lawyer to contest your actions on the mortgage. They're claiming you're mentally unstable and made these decisions while cognitively impaired." My blood ran cold. Karen was trying to have me declared incompetent to regain control of my money. Can she do that? "She can try, but Mr. Harrison is already prepared. He has documentation of all your recent decisions, recorded meetings where you were perfectly lucid, medical records showing you're in good mental health. She has no case. The next few weeks were a battle fought across continents. Karen filed a petition claiming I was suffering from dementia and had been manipulated into fleeing the country. She demanded emergency guardianship and access to all my accounts. I underwent a comprehensive evaluation at the American Embassy in Lisbon, 3 hours of medical and psychological testing conducted by a certified psychiatrist. Mrs. Patterson, Dr. Santos said when she delivered the results, "You are in excellent mental health for your age. Your cognitive function is above average, your reasoning is sound, and your decisions show careful planning and consideration. I'll be sending a detailed report to the court in Colorado stating that there is absolutely no basis for these allegations." The petition was dismissed. Karen's false claims were noted in the official record. If she tried this again, she could face legal consequences. But she wasn't finished. A month after I arrived in Portugal, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Please read this, Mom." Against my better judgment, I opened it. "Mom, I know you're blocking all my calls, and I probably deserve it, but you need to understand what's happening here. We're about to lose the house." Derek lost his job after his last project failed. The kids had to transfer to public school. My design business is barely surviving. Everything is falling apart, and it's all because you decided to abandon us over one stupid comment made during a stressful moment. Is this really what Dad would have wanted? For you to destroy your own family over a misunderstanding? Please, Mom. Come home. Fix this. We need you. I read the email 3 times. Not once did it contain a genuine apology. Not once did she acknowledge that what she said was cruel, not just a stupid comment. Not once did she ask how I was doing, whether I was happy, whether I was healthy. Everything was about her. Her house, her business, her children, her problems. I typed my response carefully. "Karen, what I'm experiencing now is simply the natural consequence of your choices. You asked me to sign over my assets and disappear. I'm honoring that request. The only difference is that I'm keeping my assets and building a beautiful life for myself. I hope you learn from this experience. I hope you teach your children to value people over money. But I will not be returning, and I will not be fixing anything. You are an adult. Fix your own life. Mom." I blocked that email address and poured myself another glass of wine. Months passed. My new life in Portugal blossomed in ways I never could have imagined. I enrolled in Portuguese language classes, joined a painting group, became part of a community of expat women who had all left difficult situations to start over. One of them, a British woman named Dorothy, became a close friend. She had moved to Lisbon 5 years ago after her son and daughter-in-law tried to force her into a care home so they could take over her house. The hardest part, Dorothy told me over coffee one afternoon, was accepting that the children I raised with all my love had become strangers who only saw me as a burden or a bank account. "How did you move past it?" I realized that I deserved better, and that loving myself wasn't selfish. It was survival. Her words stayed with me. 6 months after my arrival, I received news from Mr. Harrison. The foreclosure on Karen's house had been completed. As the guarantor who had made the down payment, I was entitled to recover my initial investment plus interest. Total recovery is approximately $147,000, he reported. After the house sale and legal fees, the funds will be transferred to your Portuguese account. I used some of that money to buy a small apartment outright. No mortgage, no debt. It was mine completely. The rest I invested carefully, building a financial foundation that would support me comfortably for the rest of my life. Meanwhile, I learned through Martha that Karen and Derek had moved into a small rental apartment. Derek was working as a real estate agent, not a developer, earning a modest salary. Karen had closed her struggling design studio and taken a job at a home goods store. The twins had adjusted to public school. By all accounts, they were doing fine. Part of me felt sadness at their situation. but a larger part recognized that they were finally facing the consequences of their choices, something that had been delayed for far too long by my endless interventions. On the 1-year anniversary of my arrival in Portugal, I decided to write my story. Not for Karen, not for revenge, but for the countless women trapped in similar situations, giving everything to ungrateful children while slowly erasing themselves. I called it the Thanksgiving Gift, and I submitted it to a blog that shared stories of women who had found the courage to reclaim their lives. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from mothers around the world, sharing similar experiences. My daughter told me I was too old to be useful anymore. Reading your story gave me the courage to finally set boundaries. I've been paying my son's mortgage for 12 years while he drives a luxury car and vacations in Europe. This week, I'm stopping. Thank you for showing me that choosing myself isn't abandonment, it's self-preservation. The story was shared thousands of times. A publisher contacted me about expanding it into a book. I agreed, and spent the next year writing a guide for older women trapped in financially and emotionally exploitative family relationships. The book was called When Love Becomes Debt, A Mother's Guide to Financial Freedom After 60. It became a bestseller in 3 countries. 18 months after I left Denver, I received a handwritten letter. The return address was Karen's rental apartment, but the handwriting wasn't hers. It was smaller, more careful. Dear Grandma, the letter began. This is Emma. Ethan and I miss you very much. Mom and Dad told us you moved away because you were sick, but we found your book at the library and read it together. We know the truth now about what Mom said to you and why you left. We're really sorry for what happened. We love you, and we hope you're happy in Portugal. Maybe when we're older, we can come visit you. We think about you every day. Love, Emma and Ethan. I cried for an hour. Not from sadness, but from the realization that my grandchildren understood. They saw the truth. They still loved me. I wrote back immediately, a long letter telling them about my life in Lisbon, about the beautiful sunsets and the delicious pastries and the kind friends I had made. I included photos of my apartment, my painting class, the view from my balcony. I love you both more than you can possibly know, I wrote. And when you're 18, old enough to make your own choices, my door will always be open. Until then, know that Grandma is happy, healthy, and thinking of you every single day. I sent the letter directly to their school, addressed to them personally, ensuring Karen couldn't intercept it. 2 years after that Thanksgiving dinner, I celebrated my 74th birthday in Lisbon, surrounded by friends, good food, and genuine laughter. My book had been translated into 6 languages. I had a comfortable apartment, solid investments, and a community of people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. That evening, an email arrived from an address I almost didn't recognize. It was Karen. Mom, I finished reading your book last night. I couldn't sleep after. I had no idea how much you sacrificed for me over the years, how much I took for granted, how cruel my words must have sounded that day. I'm not asking you to forgive me or come back. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost, and I'm sorry, truly sorry. I hope you're as happy as you deserve to be, Karen. I read the email several times. For the first time, it sounded genuine. No requests for money, no demands, no manipulation, just acknowledgement and remorse. I didn't reply. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Some words can never be taken back. But I saved the email in a folder, evidence that perhaps, eventually, my daughter had learned something from this painful experience. Today, as I sit on my sunny balcony overlooking the red rooftops of Lisbon, I think about that cold Thanksgiving morning 3 years ago. I remember the woman who stood on her daughter's doorstep, desperate for love and acceptance, willing to give away everything just to feel wanted. That woman is gone. In her place is someone I barely recognize but deeply admire, a woman who chose herself, a woman who walked away from exploitation and built a life worth living, a woman who proved that it's never too late to start over. Karen once told me the best Thanksgiving gift would be for me to sign over my assets and disappear. I gave her half of that wish. I disappeared. But I kept everything else. My money, my dignity, my self-respect, my joy. And in the end, that was the greatest gift I ever gave myself. Thank you for listening until the end. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel so you can join me and others on this journey, where every story is a lesson, and every lesson brings us closer to understanding love, family, and ourselves.